to the 49th episode of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver. I am a singer-songwriter and essayist based in Los Angeles. And so many other things. I like to make pies, blah, blah, blah. It all comes up in the show, right? This was started last year around this time because I just wanted to connect with other songwriters about another thing that I love, books. And it's been really fun to have these conversations throughout the year. Inevitably, the creative process comes up, spirituality, current issues, all kinds of stuff, plus songs and books. So I'm very happy to welcome my guest this week, Stella Schindler. She is from the D.C. area, all the way across the country. And it's funny, when the airplanes from my local airport go over just a few minutes ago, she was like, "What's that?" It's kind of funny that you would be able to hear the airplanes from 3,500 miles away, but there you have it. She is part of a band called Kentucky Avenue, and Stella and I met at the beginning of 2020 in New Orleans, and we were at a music conference, and we just happened to sit next to each other, and I cannot tell you at what point we started talking, but I think that during the course of that presentation that we were both attending, we just were laughing at the same things, we were kind of taking notes at the same points, and just connecting. So at the end we got to talking, and this is actually our second show during COVID that we have spent with each other. I don't know if you can say play, because today's more of a talking. Anyway, without ado, Stella, hello.
Hi, hello, hello.
I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Oh my gosh, it's great to be back in a little bit
Yeah.
of a different scenario, but
I know.
no, I've been really excited about this. So thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Are you, so what is life like in DC right now? Before we went live, you and I were talking, there's a jam session that happens about a mile from my house at a cafe, and it just started happening again outside on a patio, but there's live music that's slowly starting to happen. What is going on in DC right now?
You know, they're starting. It's interesting. Some clubs have been able to have people play. There's so many restrictions to the capacity, the number of people there, to the how much time can play, what you order. Yeah, I mean, how expensive the tickets are. So there have been a few venues that have been doing this over the whole pandemic time, but those venues that have outdoor spaces have been able to do some things. Not all along, but especially over the summer, there were some things.
Yeah.
We played at a brewery that has, just acres upon acres of land, and so people
Yeah.
could really spread out, and so they just had a really good setup. And actually, just last weekend, we played in Luray, Virginia, in the Shenandoah,
That sounds
which
lovely.
was just awesome. And it was just outdoors on their main town plaza. There was about maybe 80 people there, and
Wow.
again, just they spaced everyone out. There was tickets that were sold ahead of time just to make sure that could happen. And
And was
yeah.
that just like a free oh no, you said
No,
that
they
tickets
paid.
were
Yeah,
sold,
they
so.
paid. It was a ticketed show. Typically, this organization, it was the Performing Arts Luray organization, and they have a theater in the heart of their town, and we would have been in the theater playing two sets with an intermission and that kind of thing. But they just moved it outdoors to their plaza. Obviously, not as many people, but they sold tickets. They did a great job of just marketing it and making people aware that it was happening, and it was a sold-out show, which was fun to say after all this time,
I know.
but it was great just being outside and playing with the guys again, and
Yeah.
making new friends and new fans and all of that. It was a real delight.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Was there
How about
anything
you?
strange?
You've been playing too. I mean, you were
Well,
talking
I
about the
did.
jam sessions, but
Yeah, well, yeah, on my front lawn
yeah.
for a couple of weeks, I had a bass player and drummer come to my front lawn, and it was just like a Saturday afternoon, and the neighbors and dogs and babies and the blackbirds, and
Yeah.
it was just really, really fun. The drummer is showing up what is today? Thursday. The drummer is going to be coming over on Saturday this weekend. So
Great.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
There's something about live music that we loved it before, but there's something about it when you encounter it now. I can see it in my neighbor's eyes, and I can feel it in my own heart when I have gone for a walk and encountered, some kind of live music happening. It just, you don't even realize you're necessarily hungry for it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you encounter it and you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to like bask in this,
It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
we'll
coming.
see. Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to, I mean, did you feel like, oh yeah, this is home, and you were just able to settle right into the familiarity of performing, or was it strange for you? Was it?
No, it felt like home again. I mean, it didn't really feel strange. I think maybe because we've had some I've been playing music just in my living room, or and just in we have some rehearsal space that's been big enough for us to get together once in a while just to keep things fresh.
Yeah.
But so I did, I don't think, and plus we had an album that just came out. We digitally, it just came out on all the streaming sites on April 16th, so not that long
Oh my
ago.
gosh.
Yeah, really, really.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So there was just a lot, there's just like music on the brain, for so long. And so I
Yeah.
think that's, even though we weren't playing live, I just felt like it was still there,
Yeah.
and really present in the forefront of my heart and mind and soul, so.
Well, tell me about this album. You just released it. Was it recorded during COVID, or was it recorded before?
Oh gosh, we
How-
lucked out so much, Arielle. Oh my goodness. So what happened was we had done all the foundation of the recording right before the pandemic hit. And there were some rumblings of it, overseas kind of thing, but it was
Such a strange time
Yeah.
that, like those rumblings. I've been thinking about those rumblings.
Yes, yeah.
Like
You
we
know,
thought
and I
that we
had
were
s-
impervious or something. Like
Exactly. Except my sister. My sister, I remember she saying, "Mark my words," and this was way back when. "Mark my words, you're probably going to be out of school and out of work and I thought, "Oh, really? Is it that bad?"
wow.
And this was way before it came over here. And but luckily we had done all the basic tracks, all the scratch vocals, and had the drums and guitar and all that. And then right before, like, okay, it hit, but then before lockdown, like that weekend, we had the bass player in there, and I mean, it just so happened. And then it was lockdown, can't bring anybody. Well, we
Yeah.
had already planned to farm out some of the pieces like banjo and pedal steel and all of that.
Yeah.
I have a friend in Kentucky, of all places, for Kentucky Avenue, who was going to play for us and do it that way anyway. So we were able to just, with the gift of technology these days, we could kind of farm it out.
Yeah.
And then, we could go piecemeal. I could come in, Dave could come in. We just did things in very careful, strange ways, and
Yeah.
we got it done. I mean, I'm so grateful for the timing of that, because if we hadn't had all that done right before it hit,
Yeah.
it would have been a different story. But it took us a while. But we got, we actually put it out, kind of did a pre-release, because we had vinyl made and CDs made, and so that came out a few months before the whole digital kind of splash.
Yeah.
But that, if I could say something about, when you do put out an album with this, you can't have a CD release party or an album release party. And so what we did instead was we eked out a single here, a single there, made some
Yeah.
videos we just compiled footage that we had from before.
Yeah.
And, doing that, we could kind of keep the album sort of alive until, then it's digital in April, and we're hoping, by the end of the summer, early fall,
Can do a
that we
proper
could
release
actually
party.
have a good, solid show with lots of people, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of our hope right now. But you know what? It got us off our rear end to get the videos done, and it was really good in that sense. We had to kind of focus on some other things that maybe we wouldn't have
Yeah.
done in that
Well,
way.
I think that's actually a really smart way to release an album nowadays, is to release a series of singles, because content is, I mean, no matter what industry right now, content is sort of, they say content is king or queen.
Right.
But it's a great way to, it's like once you have that single, you can talk about the single, and it kind of gives you the opportunity to spotlight it a little bit and talk about
Yeah.
it in ways that you wouldn't be able to talk about when you just release the whole album. It's like, oh, then you have 10 tracks to talk about versus
Right.
just kind of zoning in on,
Yes.
or honing in on that single track. Like, what is this about? How is this
Actually,
made?
that's a great point. And I mean, kind of to our topic of tomes and tunes, I thought because we could, focus on the single, we could really think about the story. I mean, we had the story as we're writing it, but to actually put it out there and kind of write a little background story for it,
Yeah.
and putting together a video for it that had a little bit of that story behind it, was really a gift, to be able to take a really close look,
Yeah.
at our songs that we've been sort of living with for a while now,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a really great experience. There's frustrations obviously with any project, but on the whole, we're really happy to
Yeah.
have this. Yeah.
Yeah, you're making me think that, when you first write a song, as songwriters, so um, we are so tangled up in the story of the song, whatever the song is about, whatever was the original inspiration
Yeah.
for it, whatever's happening on the page, what's happening with the lyrics, the words, the melody. Of course, we're writing the changes and the rhythm and all this, the structure
Yeah.
of the song, but we're very, very close when we're writing the song to the story of its origin and what it's about. But in the recording process, eventually that sort of falls away, and we're really focused on the sonic aspects of the
Right.
song. We're focused on the instrumentation, the arrangement, the dynamics, the fixing of the wrong notes, or the whatever it might
Right,
be,
right.
and we're so keyed into the audio, the sonic landscape of the
true.
song, that by the time you get through recording, you're closer to the sound of it than you are to the story of it. And many months might have gone by from, I mean, more than many months. I mean,
Right,
from the
of
time that you
course.
wrote the song to that point. So releasing a single in this way and revisiting the story and trying to remember, like, what was the seed of this and where did it come from and how can I communicate? Because in the end, that is what people are connecting with
Yeah.
anyway, right? The song,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
words, the story.
If I could, just because along this note that I do want to mention, we did get an album review, of our record, and the he said that this album is like reading a good book.
Yeah,
Going, and I
Yeah.
just thought, yeah, that just is,
yeah,
and he just, and even in his review, to take it apart and have someone else recognize the stories, and
Yeah.
even, but then also listening to someone else's reaction or interpretation of what these stories are,
Yeah.
which are a little bit different, not wildly different, but it was just interesting. I mean, even the kind of emotional backdrop, might have shifted a little in his view than maybe what we did. But I mean, it makes perfect sense, and it was
Yeah.
just really beautiful to kind of see someone read it as a book in a sense, and listen so carefully to each song, and think about the story behind it, and not just, like you said, the sonic
Yeah.
qualities. And I was it was probably the best review I've ever received. I mean, just
Yeah.
because of that attention. And I'm not sitting here trying to pat myself on the back. It's more just I
No, but it
actually want
feels
to
like
pat
a
him on. I want to
gift.
pat him on the back. I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like a real gift. You know,
When someone pays attention to you, when they hear
yes.
the thing that you are saying, when I mean listening,
Yeah.
it's like probably one of the greatest gifts
Yes.
to be heard, to be listened to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
It's
And to be
beautiful.
known. I mean, and you feel like they get it. At the same time, that listening kind of bears that kind of fruit, which is really edifying in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's so funny because just this morning I was talking with another songwriter, um, uh, a, a folk radio DJ, and this songwriter were talking about me, and which is always nice to hear.
Yeah.
I hope it was good words, but I'll
Yeah, I
just leave
know,
it at
right?
that. Like it's nice, it's nice
They
that they
just-
were. I was at least on their radar. But the songwriter, what he was relaying to me was that the DJ actually wants my new album is beautifully produced. It was mixed and mastered by just top team. The producer did a phenomenally beautiful job. I'm just so happy with everything about my new album that came out last summer, 2020 pandemic,
yeah, see?
another pandemic baby.
Yeah.
But what the radio DJ was saying was that actually the songwriter was suggesting that I send him my older albums because the DJ actually wants he wants to hear some of my music that's a little less produced. He is a phenomenal songwriter himself, and he really just wants to hear the song. He doesn't want to, be enveloped by this sonic landscape that we were creating with this album, which, I don't know, that was just a really interesting
absolutely.
reminder, and it was it was kind of in a way a joy to hear because when it comes down to it, it's the song.
Right.
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 I want to say hi to Mark Denman from Texas, and he says, Stella, thank you for being part of our afternoon. Mark, thank you for being here. Mark saw me play in Denton, Texas in 2006 when I was on tour.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he tracked me, even though I took a long time off of music, a 10-year break between that tour and now Mark tracked me down at some point in time. He's like, I remember you. I bought your CDs, and he's just been a really great supporter. So
That's
Mark,
great.
thank you for being
Hi,
here.
Mark.
And you will love Mark. You will love Stella's music and Kentucky Avenue. So you said that did you say Pedal Steel is in Kentucky? Is that what you were saying? Have you been to Kentucky?
You know what? I have not.
That is
You
really
would think,
funny.
I know, there are a lot of places. I have not been to Kentucky. I have not been to Nashville or Asheville. I mean, these are places I'm dying to go to, just with the music we're playing and performing. And I just, we're due, I think, and
Well,
if I
let's
have
go
to
on tour.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't. Were you in Nashville at all? I can't.
Yeah, I
remember.
played some shows in Nashville. The Exit Inn, which recently closed, was a huge venue, a little bit too big actually for what I was doing. But that was a phenomenal club. Third and Lindsley, 12th and Porter. They're just. I mean, it's just. And what's interesting about Nashville is that it's not just. I mean, I played at Borders Books and Music. Remember, I think Borders is now closed down, right?
Places,
Yeah, but it was an open mic that the first day I landed in Nashville. So I played shows there when I was on tour, but I also lived there for a very short amount of time right after 9/11. And the first night that I arrived in Nashville, I was kind of getting my bearings, driving around town, stopped to get a slice of pizza, and this guy was sitting outside the pizza place. There was a picnic table right outside, and he had a pitcher of beer, and maybe he was eating pizza. I don't know, but he had a pitcher of beer, and
More
he said, "What?"
importantly,
Yeah, and he said, come join me, come sit down.
yeah,
So I got a slice and I sat down with him, and he was a songwriter, and I won't tell you his song ideas, but he told me a bunch of song ideas that he had and songs that he had written. And then Stella Dolly Parton's sister, walked into the restaurant, and the two of them started talking, and he introduced me to her, and she invited me to play an open mic that she hosted at Borders
Wow.
Books and Music. And that's what Nashville is
Yeah,
like. I
that's
feel like
amazing.
that story just kind of like,
Oh, that's great.
really, yeah. So
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I think yes. I think I think we have a few of our shows under our belt virtually. We need to take it on the road and
Take it on
in
the road.
person.
Yeah.
So we'll.
In Asheville, I cannot remember the name of the venue I played in Asheville, but I do remember the greenery. Asheville is just a
Yeah.
gorgeous,
Oh, I
gorgeous
just see pictures
place.
of it, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I love
My
North
sister was
Carolina.
just there, so she was rubbing it in a little bit.
So you have not been to Kentucky, but you have this band named Kentucky Avenue,
Yes.
and your website tells a little bit of the story of the band's origin. But when did that happen? When did this band come together?
So I'm a high school English teacher, and I was invited to sit in with, I'll just call it a dad band. Of the dads in my school, had a band together, and occasionally they'd play for some of our school events or charity events. And so I was invited to sit in with them. Some of the people organizing it, knew I play music.
That
And
is I need to like take a moment
yes,
for dad
you do.
band.
You do. And everything you're probably thinking is totally true. They're playing all the classic rock songs that everybody loves to sing along to, and they're a fun group. And so anyway, I went to, I'll try to make this a short-ish story, but I sat in with them, and then, we did the events, but then one of the dads is actually not a dad at my school. And this is Dave, who eventually is my band partner. And he, we just started, as we were practicing for the event, we just started talking about music. And he's in the music industry, and he had been the Discovery Music Channel music director, I should say, for about 10 years at that time. And, but, all his life he's doing film and TV production. And so we just started talking about original music, and we said, hey, I've got some old songs. Can I run some by you? And just one thing led to another as we were writing, these songs were kind of coming to life. And as he would be playing, I would kind of sing along, do some harmonies and vice versa. And he would add some guitar parts. And it was just like, it came very organically, And so we thought, oh, this is really interesting. So that was August of 2016. And by December of 2016, we had our first gig. I mean, we opened up at this little beer shop, and for another band that was playing there. And so we had a few names we were, just bandying about. And one time when we were practicing, he said, I should have you come to my family's house for dinner. You can meet my wife and my kids and everything. And so we decided on a date. He said, I'll just text you the address. And at the end of practice, I looked at my phone, I saw the address, and I looked at him and I showed him the phone. I'm like, are you sure this is the address you're living in? He said, yeah, it's a place we used to own, but we're living in here temporarily because we're waiting for the tenant to move out of our other house, and we're going to move back. And so he, he said, well, what's wrong with that address? And I said, well, that's really weird because I lived there, like at that time, I lived there 15 years ago until the owners kicked us out. It was a group house at the time, a rental. And and he said, who owned the house, you know? And I told him the name. He said, oh my gosh, my wife and I are the ones who bought the house.
That kicked
And
you
that,
out.
and that who
Oh.
kicked us out. So we were,
Oh, weird.
little did Dave and Jenna know that they were kicking out, you know, the future, you know, Kentucky Avenue bandmate. And, you know, the house was on Kentucky Avenue, and we just said, okay, this is just too weird. And
Yeah, there's kismet.
there's a story, there's a song. I think I need to learn how to tell the story maybe a little bit, you know, the short version and then the long version, but there it is. But
Wow.
it's just such a funny coincidence, but we've never let that go. Like that crazy coincidence. I could have lived in any house in the DC area, any group house, you know, and it had been on Kentucky Avenue, and I got kicked out, and
He was the one that was
out.
buying it when
Yeah.
you got kicked out. And
Yeah.
then when you went to dinner with him and his wife and his kids, they were in the process of kicking
They were
more
going to
people
move.
out?
Yeah,
Is
they
that-
were.
was that
Yeah,
it?
it was just such a crazy, you know, and it was so funny because, like, you know, I knock on the door and his wife answers the door and says, "Welcome home." You know, it's like, "Welcome," you know, and so it was just kind of. I mean, it was really funny. So
Wow.
we've had a good time just having that in our history now.
It's like
you
your
know?
relatives. It's like
Yeah,
you're related
it's a really funny.
somehow.
Yes,
It's the family
right.
house.
Yeah, you know.
But that
But
house
now
is
it-
now sold.
Well, it is not only sold; it was raised, and
Oh.
on top of it became, or on the land became a $1 million, you know, McMansion kind of a place. So it is no more.
Oh, the ghost of
So
Kentucky
the
Avenue.
Ghost of Kentucky Avenue. That might be a good song too, but
Yeah, and you guys
Yeah.
live on. The ghost of Kentucky
Yep,
Avenue rides
yep.
on.
That's right. That
Plays
is
on.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But it's fun because I can't tell you. I mean, there's a Kentucky Avenue, and I think there's a Kentucky Avenue in almost every state because every friend I have or relative who goes anywhere,
They take
I
pictures.
inevitably will get a picture of a street sign, you know, Kentucky Avenue. So
That's a
it's
great
just-
theme
it's
for a
kinda fun.
tour or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we could do a
Yeah.
lot. We can do a lot, you know, traveling on down Kentucky Avenue and
Yeah.
So it's been good to us, that name and just the whole history and
Huh.
you know, yeah.
There was a band in Boston when I lived there years ago. They played every Monday night at the Tiernanog, which was a little
great
little
name.
little bar. It was about, I want to say probably 40, 60 people capacity. There are a bunch of little bars like this in the Boston area, and it had a tiny stage, just a little triangle in the front corner, you know, and a bar running the length
yeah.
of the place. And every Monday night, the Vinyl Avenue String Band would play at the Tiernanog. And the Vinyl Avenue String Band was, you might be familiar with some of these names, Chris Delmhorst,
Oh yes. Okay.
and Rye Kavanagh and Sean Staples, both of whom were part of and or are part of, maybe with Rye, Session Americana, which is a really wonderful Americana band out of
Okay.
Boston. And they tend to sit around, like they'll get up on stage and they'll sit down around a table as if they're at like
Oh,
a session,
that's great.
you know, at an Irish session or something like that. But it's all Americana. It's almost all original songs from all of the players in the band.
Oh, that's
And Katie Curtis would sometimes come by and sing harmonies. Jennifer Kimball, who used to sing with Jonathan Brooke in The Story.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
And
Okay.
it was just like, it was sort of like this jam session that happens here down the street from my house on Thursday mornings. It was a Monday night, so there's like, you know, not a lot else going on. Most
Yeah.
people didn't have gigs out of town on a Monday night, so they would just, you know, roll down to the Tiernanog, and
Oh, that's
it was a
great.
great time. It was like a slice of time that was really special. But they're kind of like your cousins, Vinyl Avenue String Band and
Yes, yeah.
Kentucky Avenue.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you are an English teacher, and I am fascinated by that. And also, I've had a number of English or literature teachers on this show over time. And it's always so cool,
Yeah.
because of course it's tomes and tunes, so it's like the intersection of songwriting and books. And there are a number of songwriters that are literary writers or English teachers or something like that. Um, I guess that you have always been a book lover. Is that right?
You know, it's interesting. I didn't really, I kind of came late to the book world. I mean, I love to, I would read and, um, I kind of blitzed through the Nancy Drew series, when I was little, I mean, things like that. But, I really didn't take a full dive into literature until college and
Oh.
after. I mean, I wasn't an English major at the
Oh.
time. I kind of went back
What did you
and
major
did
in
this
college?
in art history.
Oh, okay, that makes sense to me. I was bracing myself for like economics or something like
Okay,
that.
no, yeah, it was
Art history, I can see
art
that with you.
history. I just I was interested in actually the philosophy of art and aesthetics,
Yeah.
and I wanted, I changed my major many times, but then when I was kind of intrigued by this idea that you could study the beautiful, and what is beauty, and it was actually a very spiritual thing as much as intellectual, and
Yeah.
but I mean, I felt like it had to do with my life. It wasn't just like what I was going to do with my life, but who was I going to be,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah, I feel like a lot of undergraduate, not all college students do this, but that's a really great point. That I think that a lot of what's happening in college is who am I and who do I want to be, and
yeah.
that's some. I'm pouring myself a little
Oh,
glass
good.
of water. Yeah, I know that I came across like the waterfall. But okay, go on.
Oh
Art
no,
history.
yeah,
Who do
but I
you?
just,
What is
and
beauty?
and I thought, do I study philosophy, or do I go into art history? And honestly, the big decision maker was, I realized as a philosophy major, I was going to have to take this formal logic class, and I thought this is terrible. This is really terrible, and especially because I later went to get a degree in the liberal arts, like the great books program, so I feel very guilty saying this, but it was too much math, like that
Yeah.
kind of a mind,
Yeah.
And I thought, this will kill every ounce of why I'm doing this philosophy to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, wrongfully, I look back and I see that probably would have been good for me in a lot of ways. And so but it really was good. And I even struggled in the art history because I was not a typical art history student either, because I wasn't interested necessarily in like the patronage and the art, in that light,
Right.
But I was, again, but the history and to understand like the spirit of an age and, through art and, it's just, yes, how does art reflect what a human being is and how human beings understand themselves, I was really interested in that. And art history provided a beautiful foundation for that. But of course, when I left college, I thought, now what do I do with this? And I dabbled in a few things. I had a lot of odd jobs, worked in a record store, that kind of thing. And music had, I was playing in some college bands that I thought maybe I'll just continue with this. And but eventually, I ended up going back to school again for another very practical major, the Great Books program. Actually, here in near D.C. At St. John's College in Annapolis, they have a sister school in New Mexico, in Santa Fe. And they're a very peculiar school, but that was a wonderful experience. But they have a very particular approach. You don't major in anything. You study multiple subjects, but you start sort of philosophically and you read primary sources, and everything is more or less in seminar style. And But then after that, I thought, now, again, now what do I do? And lots of odd jobs and playing some music. And then finally, I thought back to my art history days. And it is funny how this came. I thought back in art history, there were, you would be an apprentice. If you were going to be an artist, you were a craftsman also, and you studied under someone. And there was something very practical about that. It wasn't just like, I think I want to draw, this abstract thing, it like to go back to the roots there. And I thought it was interesting because I started to think of teaching in that way. And going back to school and getting a teaching certificate, and studying that, because there had been a time where I sort of poo-pooed that, like, if you're just a good person and interested in things, you could be a good teacher, but that actually is not true. It can be true, but there is an art of learning an art of teaching that you can learn,
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful. I mean, I was kicking and screaming a lot of the ways, just with some of the theories and trends of education
Yeah.
but I'm so grateful for that, I have to say.
Yeah.
And then my choice was, well, what am I going to teach? And going through a few different subjects and different age groups, I settled on, I felt really drawn to high school, first of all, and second of all, English, because I thought that is the place where I could bring my art history and my humanities, and I could do it.
So you didn't come to it from the subject, you came
No.
to it from the teaching side. I'm going to teach, and then who will I teach,
Yeah.
and what can I teach, or
Yeah.
what do I want to teach?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's been a real, it's been a very creative job and vocation, I mean, and I think and to do this while I'm playing music and performing and writing, it's been such a gift that, I'm doing both of these things and hopefully doing them okay. I mean, and, no, I say that with more of a sense of humor. I throw myself into both of those things, and I do feel really called to each of them, and they really do complement each other, I have to say. I mean, and my students love the fact that I play music, and I love bringing it into the classroom.
How do you bring it into the classroom?
I'll play for them,
Oh.
and I make it. I think there's only been one time in the 20 years or so that I've been teaching that I've brought my music in as like a text that we were going to study. I did that a long time ago. And it was fun. It was during a poetry unit and all that. But, over the years, I bring music in simply to play music. It's not to do anything with it. It's just to share something with them and for them to see that I have a life that is full and outside of, I don't live at school, which sometimes I think students wonder if they're teachers.
Yeah.
Do they
Well, how do
actually
you-
have a home?
How do you integrate that? How do you have the students for, I'm guessing, 45 minutes or 53 minutes or whatever. It's always, I remember it's always like some odd number.
Yes.
And so you're studying the Scarlet Letter.
Yeah.
And then how is it that you just at the end of class you're like, okay, we'll just end with
that's
a song
exactly
today?
what I do. I'll say, and usually I'll have my guitar hidden, and so they don't see it when they come in. And then we'll be doing, because I'll think about, okay, this is the day where I have all my classes, no one's going to get left out. I'll bring my guitar, and so there'll be 10, 15 minutes left in class, and we'll have a discussion, and I'll say, I'll be looking at the clock, it's getting close to the 15 or 10 minute left. And I'll say, okay, hurry up, stop talking. I have my guitar. Do you want to hear a song? And they, and of course they're like, what? You brought your guitar, and so then they, yay, oh my gosh. And the thing is, this has happened. I've been at this school, long enough where like students come in knowing, oh, Miss Schindler, she plays music. She's got records. and I will discover over the year that they will have, like, they'll be drawn to a particular song, and they'll even ask for it, to play. So it's really, it's a real treat. But then I also, we might, other school events, or retreats or something like that, and I'll play a song for them, and that'll just be a special thing, and they'll remember that. And sometimes they'll say, how come you don't play music for us anymore? Or it's been a long time. Sometimes they'll just ask for it, and then the next day I'll bring it. So, but like I said, I don't make it something they study. I just want them to just listen. And some students are like, "Mer," and most of them are, you just see, like, as soon as I start singing, they just have this big smile. I love that so much. But, because they just see you in such a different light at that moment, So it's really beautiful.
It's funny because I feel like this is strange that I feel this way, but I sort of feel like you're doing both a service and a disservice. A service and a disservice. And the disservice is simply that you might be awakening a passion for one of your students to become a songwriter.
Yeah.
And so then travel forward in their life, 10 years, and it's a path that many have trod, but every single person that pushes off onto the path of songwriting has to blaze their own path. It is literally not something that and it's challenging in that way. And so, I'm kind of like, tongue in cheek saying a disservice,
but right.
But I think that that's how it happened for me, which is that I encountered a woman who was a songwriter who played guitar and sang, and I think that that's the seed of why I do it. And my dad also did it, but there was something about it being a woman and seeing that reflection, and you're reminding me that when I was in third grade, I also had a teacher in Hebrew school who would bring in her guitar, and she wouldn't, I don't know if she was a songwriter or if she just, played to, Hebrew songs or something like that. But, I had forgotten about that until you were talking just now, and I'm thinking, that probably was a seed as well. There was something about, there was something that I liked about that those women holding guitars and playing music, and, I think that that's the reason I do this.
Absolutely.
So damn them,
Yes,
there's
right.
There's both like a thank you for like,
why couldn't you have been taught by someone who's also a banker or whatever?
Exactly. Like on the one hand, I want to say thank you, and on the other hand, man.
Just teasing. Yeah. This I've told this story before, and I when I do tell it to my students, I think there's a little bit of head explosion that happens, but this kind of thing, like service and disservice that you're talking about, my father, when my two brothers who are right after me, when we were all three in high school, senior, junior, freshman, and we were getting ready for college, and we were just all talking about it, and we were maybe throwing around majors and what we might study, and he said to us that, he said, well, I need to tell you all something, that you can study whatever you want, just on one condition. And we're all sitting there like, what's the condition? He said, you can study whatever you want just as long as it is useless. And we all just went, we were waiting for something else. And he said, as long as it's useless. And I thought, that was such a blessing and a curse, because I wanted to, it gave me permission to study whatever my heart desired, what was actually my passion,
Right.
not something useful and like quote unquote useful. But then it was also a curse, like you said, like a disservice, because it made life hard in a way, and I, discovered there were a lot of things that I was passionate about, but not a lot of like really concrete things, like, it was so abstract in a way for me personally. Like when I look at my brother, he wanted to do philosophy probably since he was like 4. He's just like, and he became a philosopher. He writes and teaches philosophy and now, and so he, but it was much more of a struggle. But I think that's why I dabbled in music and art history, and I could follow the wind a little bit more, and just sort of more organic ways of the way life was moving me. And even though they might be painful, there's something to be said about having all of that kind of experience, and also a kind of trust in the midst of some anxiety and uncertainty. But because there was never a sense like I need to do something practical is the wrong word, but that's the word that's coming to my mind.
Yeah, with a more clear-cut pathway to a career.
Right. Maybe that's what I'm
and-
thinking.
Yeah.
Like I was never
I'm-
career minded, I guess is what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does make for perhaps a more challenging life. Would you say, I mean, it's hard to know, how can you compare the path you're on with the path that you might have been on?
Right.
You
road
can't
the
know.
road not taken kind
Yeah,
of
you
poem.
can't
just
really
can't
know,
go back.
but
Yeah.
it seems like still it's a rich path,
Yeah.
the path of exploration.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I firmly believe that has made me the teacher that I am,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. I mean, I'm not going to, but I do think that has, and I think I bring things to the table, to the classroom, maybe in a different way than others do. But I mean, everybody has his or her own style and
Yeah.
what they're communicating and everything. But yeah, I'm really grateful to have come to teaching in that way, as opposed to knowing I wanted to be a teacher, studying education in, undergrad or English or whatever, or secondary English, and going through this path and getting a master's in education. Like, I'm actually really grateful. I personally didn't go that route. I think things would have been different, and maybe they would have been easier, perhaps, but I just think that there are some real gifts and a kind of openness, and I think that it just, and there's regrets and there's sadness along the way. I mean, it wasn't a perfect path, but I think at the very least, I think if I can tell my students this, that because it's so tempting to think that you need to know everything like this. And I just say, look at my life. It went like this, and plop,
Yeah.
here I am, ta-da, it's just
And
like,
you have lived to tell the tale, right? Like you
Right,
you survive that. And I
You know?
think that sometimes the
Yeah.
fear about that sort of life is an existential fear.
right,
How can I possibly survive that kind of path? And yet you and I are
Yeah.
both here to, as evidence that yes, you can survive that meandering life path
in a full
and
way.
in a
you
very
know?
full way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Stella, I can't wait till we go on tour so we could just spend the
I
road,
know.
like the drive part of the tour.
We're gonna
you
need to
know.
get a driver, and we can sit in the back.
Yeah,
and,
and also maybe some
hang out.
lozenges so that we can sing at the end of the day. So I would be remiss though if I didn't move the conversation to asking you, what have you been reading lately?
Oh yes. Okay. So I brought a little stack of books with me because, well, it's crazy because there are, during the school year, sometimes it's really hard to read outside of teaching, what I'm reading for teaching. But some of these books I've read so many times, and they don't get, I love that about being an English teacher, so because I can read this literature over and over again and discover something new, because the reading experience I'm having in that year translates to what's happening in the classroom that year, which makes it different from the last year. And You know, it's so fun to have this organic relationship with these novels and short stories and plays. But over the years, I've been really trying to change that, and I need to be reading not just in the summers, but even during the school year. And there's a couple of things sometimes I'm reading to see, oh, should I change some books from next year? And I had read these two Kazu Ishiguro books, and I'm pointing to them over there because it's not going to be the book that I'd like to talk about, but he wrote Never Let Me Go. It was made into a movie. Terrence Malick, I believe, directed it, and then his most recent one that just came out, Clara and the Sun. But they're these dystopian novels that they just have a very strange twist, but in a very quiet way. He has a beautiful style. And you might know him from, he wrote Remains of the Day, which became a famous film. So, but what I brought was something I read before that, actually reread. And are you familiar with Wendell Berry?
Yeah.
He is an essayist and poet and novelist. And one of my all-time favorite stories is Jayber Crow. And I read this maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and I just picked it up again. And I don't know if it's a story I would have my students read at this time. It's a very contemplative, quiet story, and but there's so many beautiful passages in here. And are you familiar with this book at all?
No, not at all.
So, I mean, when I describe it, it's going to sound like a real snoozer because, it's basically about this man who was, his parents died when he was little, and then he was taken in by his aunt and uncle who who did not have any children, and then they passed away, so he was an orphan. And then, and we're talking about a small town in the South, and he grows up in an orphanage, and then he goes off to college. He thinks he's going to be a preacher, but he ends up in this small town in Port William, and he becomes the town's barber. And then it's just basically his observations about life and community and all of that. So that's the nutshell, the skeleton of the story, and that's what I mean, like, okay, where do we go from there? But with that backdrop, how would I say it? He just plunges the depths of what it means to live in community and be a part of a community. And there are just some passages that are so incredibly beautiful. And I did choose a few if that
will
would
you
be,
share one of them? Yeah.
I would, yes, that would be great. Okay. So I picked this because I teach primarily seniors in high school, and I just thought this is, to me, this speaks a lot to maybe their experience, but the way he handles it is in a very different way. And one thing I should say that I love about this book too is that it is so quietly countercultural.
Yeah,
and
that's what he's sort of known for.
Yeah, yes, he is.
Yeah.
And so let me go. So he leaves the orphanage and he goes to university, and he's kind of a loner. But I'll read this, and then I'll say a few things about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So he's starting to get a little bit, what would I say? Disgruntled with the university life. And so he says, I was going along, led by this love I had of reading books and pushed by the feeling left over from my earlier teachers that I ought to make something out of myself and rise above my humble origins. I was attending my classes, doing the reading, taking the tests, even making good grades, though I pretty much didn't care whether they were good or not. But aside from my declaration that I wanted to be a teacher, I had made no career preparation at all. I wasn't taking required courses. I had a faculty advisor whose name I had never spoken, and could not remember. I had not been in ROTC. I had not taken hygiene or physical education or science. I had taken a course in which we had read some of Dante in English, and it made me wish I knew his Italian, but I had never enrolled in a course in any foreign language. I was not preparing for any career or life that the university recommended or that I could imagine. I tried to imagine myself as a teacher, but I had no more success at that than I'd had at imagining myself as a preacher. Though, as before, I sort of dreamed of a salary and a wife. The future was coming to me, but I had not so much as lifted a foot to go to it. Maybe my failure at Pigeonville, his college, carried over into my time at the university like an infection. Maybe my character was leading me astray. Maybe I was called to what I had not thought, as Professor Admire had said. Along in the fall of 1936, after the weather got cold, about the time I finished figuring out that all the institutions I had known were islands, the whole weight of my unimagined, unlooked-for life came down on me, and I hit the bottom, or anyhow, I hit what felt mighty like the bottom. For the first time, maybe since my early days at the Good Shepherd Orphanage, I felt just awfully lonesome. I felt sad beyond the thought or memory of happiness. Maybe I had felt those feelings before, but before I could stop them. Now, I couldn't stop them. And then he goes further. By the time I had gotten to Lexington, his college, I was so convinced of the temporariness of any stay I would ever make in this world that I hadn't formed any ties at all. And this is where he starts to build, like where he's going to go next. At the trotting track and at the shop, I had made acquaintances, but I didn't make any friends. At the university, I came and went almost without speaking to anybody. Maybe I did and have forgot, but I don't remember eating a meal with another soul during the year. In about 10 months, I stayed in Lexington. For a long time, I liked it that way. I enjoyed coming and going without telling or explaining, being free. I enjoyed listening without talking. I enjoyed being wherever I was without being noticed. But then, when the dark change came over my mind, I was in a fix. My solitariness turned into loneliness. When I was alone, those images moved, and my aunt's voice sounded in my mind, and I couldn't stop them. What I had thought was the bottom kept getting lower in little jerks. When I cried, it was getting harder to stop. The memories of my days at Squire's Landing, his childhood, which I had once been able to walk about in my mind, had shrunk and drawn away. That old life had come to be like a little painted picture at the bottom of a well, and the well was getting deeper. The picture that I had inside me was more real than anything outside, and yet it was getting even smaller and farther away and harder to call back. That, I guess, is why I got so sad. I was living, but I was not living my life. So far as I could see, I was going nowhere. And now, more and more, I seemed also to have come from nowhere. Without a loved life to live, I was becoming more and more a theoretical person, as if I might have been a figment of institutional self-justification, a theoretical ignorant person from the sticks, who one day would go to a theoretical somewhere and make a theoretical something of himself, the implication being that until he became that something, he would be nothing. And then he talks about deciding he's going to quit school, and I'll just finish with this. One morning in the latter part of January in 1937, instead of going to the shop, I packed my belongings into the same box I had brought with me from Pigeonville, leaving out what wouldn't fit in, and laid a full week's rent along with my key on the table in my room. I walked out of town as easily and freely as one of the old beat-down gamblers who would show up and hang around the shop for a few weeks or months and then be gone. I headed westward for Louisville. I knew that along the rivers, the waters were rising. I love the stirring that is so heavy and so full of grief, for something that he remembers but feels like he lost touch with. And I think the reason why I think this is so, just the memories of his, where he came from, and that this projection, and this is why I think this is kind of countercultural, is because this whole projection of going to school and making something of yourself, I think we get in this habit, like we have to leave everything behind so that we can be free. And, we have to forge our own path and do this. And while I think that is so true, we see examples of that in a lot of ways. I think he makes a good case for where we actually will find ourselves is back in our roots and in our community. And I won't take the time to read it now, but towards the end of this, or I should say maybe more in the middle, when he does enter into this community life, and he's the barber and he's becoming parts of the different relationships, it's, you learn about yourself through love, and you only love when you are part of something that stays, not, okay, times are tough, so I'm going to check out, or the grass is always greener on the other side, because it always is, but you stay in a place, and you love the people, you argue with them, you hate them for times, you're confused by them, you try again, you fail, you try again, but you don't, you just keep going through life and all of its hardships, but you stay present there. And it's just the way that this unfolds for him. Not once does he just get locked into a routine. You get the sense that he says yes to something every single day of his life. And then, I don't want to give it away, but there's a big yes at the end too. But
So, remind me the name of this. Is it a short story or it's
a novel
Okay.
called Jayber Crow.
Jayber Crow by
Yeah,
London Berry?
it's a really beautiful story. But like I said, it's a pretty quiet, meditative one. It's, the narrator is a 70-year-old Jayber Crow, kind of looking back at his whole history. Because early in his life, he was told, you're never going to be given the answers to your questions. You have to live them. You have to live the answers. And it might take your whole life and then some, to find those
Yeah.
answers. So it's
And that-
basically
that-
a book about living the answers to his questions,
Yeah, and that speaks to the Rilke quote, live the questions and maybe one day you will live your way to the
Yes.
answers.
That's beautiful.
That seems like
yes.
a book that would really speak to 12th graders, I would imagine.
I might try it,
I was a weird 12th grader. It would have
Yeah.
spoken to me. So
Yes.
maybe I'm not the,
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
exact, but I don't know. I still think that at that age, those kids are really in this moment of questioning.
Yeah.
And what you read in that passage that you read, you said something about, so that you might become who you are meant to become, with the implication that who you are now is not anything, not
Yeah.
worthwhile, or
Right.
just really, like, and that's a strange idea, but it really speaks to me, that I do think that there is that message for kids, that who they are in the present moment is, they haven't yet arrived, and they will arrive somewhere down the road, and that will be legitimate, but the road and who they are now
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah. And this idea that, and you've heard that before, like we have to go beyond our humble origins, like he said, and that all of these things out there, I love he uses that word theoretical, like as opposed to like the experience kind of, where
Yeah.
you're going to be the theoretical college student who will get your theoretical job and your theoretical life that comes, success that comes with this, that, and the other thing. And yet, as if, like you said, as if you're not a person already,
Yeah.
you're a human being that means something right here and now. It's not just, but for him to turn to his roots and to find his place there, is just so beautiful. And I think, especially in America, we're such a transient culture, to think of, and I moved, I went
Yeah,
to 3
you and I
different high
have that.
schools. We
Yeah,
have
we
all
share
that.
that background.
Yeah, and so it just, to think about growing up in a place, there's a blessing and a curse about that, and he even acknowledges that. But there's a beautiful passage he has about community life that I almost feel like even in this whole political climate in our world now, and, could probably bear listening to what Wendell Berry has to say about community life. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty beautiful and simple and difficult and profound, all like wrapped into one, and sort of common sense, but also not. I mean, it doesn't seem to
Yeah.
be common sense, and but I think too, in this whole world of being so globally minded, and we're so globally connected, and the global economy and the global this and the global that, we've sort of lost the human scale, that it's really good to kind of think about what it means to be human with all of its limitations. And, we're finite in a lot of,
Yeah.
and, but there's the beauty that comes from that in being able to forgive and love and hurt and make up
Yeah.
and, converse, and it just I think we forget about those things.
Yeah, it's the antithesis of the disposable culture that we
Yes.
are in.
Yes.
That idea of, okay, we've had an argument, a friendship, but that doesn't mean that the friendship itself is disposable. That means that you're in a sticky spot. So now, how do you move forward?
Yeah.
From there. Yeah, love it. I'm intrigued. It's moving on to my
Good.
list.
All right.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
ever-growing list. I can only
My
imagine.
ever-growing list. Well, I mentioned to you earlier that I got my second Moderna shot yesterday.
Yes.
And and so I didn't end up reading anything in the book that I'm reading last night. But right now I'm working on Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses. I've never read it before, and I'm so impressed. The writing is so fun and fast and playful, and definitely, almost. I mean, it's contemplative, but not the quiet contemplation that your
Okay.
passage is. It's more of, a different energy to it. I won't share. I don't think I'll share a passage this week because I'm not much further than I was last week.
Okay.
But I'll just say that this is what's going on
All
in
right.
my world right now. Will you share a song?
Sure, I will. And it's just making me think. So I was thinking I would do a song from our new album, but just in this conversation, I'm starting to think of doing a different one. So I think I should probably go with that,
Do it.
Luckily, I'm just thinking it's in the same capo range as the key that.
Is that a
I was
Gibson? What are
gonna
you
do.
playing?
Mhm.
That jumbo. What is that jumbo?
The
Beautiful.
SJ20, yeah. With that, I have to say that what first attracted me to it are the flowers.
The flowers.
It's so bad. It's such a. Anyway, and then I
That's why they
discovered
put
what
it.
a beautiful guitar it was. I think I should. Oops, that one. But this is from the Kentucky Avenue's first album, actually, and it's funny. This is a song that my students actually request a lot. They kind of latched onto it. It's called Desert, and but it's just making me think of. It's a lot more hopeful, I guess, than the one that I was about to play. So that's why I was thinking I should maybe end on this one. So here's Desert. And I should say, my bandmate Dave sings all the way through this song with me, but we're just going to do it solo today. So,
Yeah.
Let's see. It's desert again, face against the wind, feeling all the concrete in my skin. My heart is a hole, the desert is cold, and up ahead I see an endless road. It's a place I've been before, my friend, a place I know that I will be again. It's a feeling I have for you, but is the desert just an endless road? My heart is tired, my hands are cold, and up ahead the story is untold. The story is untold. My headphones. It's desert again, lost another friend, climb into the hills and taste the wind. My heart still feels a fire, walking on a wire, high above old ashes of desire. It's a feeling I have for you, and I know that I will never feel again. But I'll wait in this place for you, my friend, 'cause the desert's not an endless road. My heart wants more than it's been shown, and up ahead the story is untold. The story is untold. The desert sun was sinking low. My Bedouin heart was beating slow, but my friend will find the end of the road. We'll listen for the wind to blow. Whisper in the end of our story. There was a desert in my heart, an oasis in your eyes. Lord, let me drink the waters from the sky. Thank you. Let me get the cans back on here.
It's such a pleasure to hear music. Thank you, Stella. That's a lovely song. I was trying to imagine what his harmony parts are when you're singing. Are they above you or below you?
Below me. Yeah, it's a yeah, and we kind of go in and out of who's the melody, who's the harmony,
Yeah.
you know, but so yep, it's on Spotify and all those other
Oh, and
things,
it's called
if
The
you-
Desert.
Desert. Mm-hmm.
Just
Yes.
Desert.
Just
Okay.
Desert.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
evocative, really lovely
Yeah.
song.
Well,
Yeah, I want to
thank
hear the
you.
I want to hear the harmonies especially.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's
mean it
beautiful.
doesn't it stands up on its own without them for sure, but just
Oh,
because you
good.
mentioned
Yeah.
Dave's part.
Yeah.
Suzanne, thank you for being
some good-
here.
Oh yeah, Suzanne, thank you. I see. Do you have a song for us? How are we doing on
Oh.
time? We are good.
I'll
I hope?
I'll take us out with one song.
Yay! Okay, great. Good.
And so funny to we'll see how this goes. I watched Ellis Paul actually play on one of his Patreon
Oh, yeah,
shows
okay.
last night. I think it was probably a couple days ago, but I think think he had just gotten his second shot, maybe.
Okay.
And he was talking about how, you know, how he was feeling, and I'm thinking about it now, or having gotten that, I'm pretty much on the other side of it, I think, but I can definitely feel like. So anyway, that said, we'll see how this goes. I have the lyrics right here in case my brain
So
is
this
not.
is brand new.
This is brand new. I've been writing mostly a song a week
Good for you.
a little while, and it actually came out of one of those song swaps that I did during Folk Alliance this year. One of my other guests, Kate Klim, she said, "Hey, I'll hold you accountable if you want to do this." I was like, "Ooh, yes, I do."
Wow.
So
And you've been doing it every week.
I've been doing it, except not last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but good for you. All right, great. New song.
So new
Do you have a
song. It's
title?
called "Bottle Up Tonight."
Okay. Okay.
Bottle Up Tonight. I know it looks like I'm not wearing headphones, but I am. They're sneaky. They're in ears.
I need to get some of those.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. One part alabaster moon, one part rustling old raccoon, one part whisper of a breeze, one part heady jasmine bloom, one part lonely nightbird tune, one part two heartbeats. Might we make an apothecary potion, or bottle it like Napa wine? Might we capture all we left unspoken? Cork it up for future delights. Whatever time might hold, whatever fate unfolds, forget all that we can't control. But let's bottle up tonight. Spotlight of a street lamp beam, shadows dancing in between. Familiar as an old refrain. All the stories of the past, the future ones that come too fast, past the edges of the frame. Might we make an apothecary potion, or bottle it like Napa wine? Might we capture all we left unspoken? Cork it up for future delights. Whatever time might hold, whatever fate unfolds, forget all that we can't control. But let's bottle up. Whatever time might hold, whatever fate unfolds, forget all that we can't control. But let's bottle up tonight.
That's just a great song. Your imagery is so vivid and lush, I guess I could say. Like, it just, you can feel it, you know.
Mm.
You're just really so good at that.
Thank you.
But thank you. Oh, I love that you're writing a song a week. Oh,
I love and hate it.
yeah. No, I know. I'm sure it's can be
Yeah.
very frustrating, you
Yeah.
know.
Um, so last week I think I was a little bit anxious in anticipation of today or yesterday's shot. Um, it- all week I was singing the idea of the song I wanted to write last week, but I actually I didn't push myself through the sludge to
Oh,
actually see it through to the end. So I have ideas, but it didn't come to anything that
okay.
can be performed at this time.
Oh,
Um, Thank you, Suzanne Weertz, for being here. Really appreciate that. Um,
I like.
and
She has a little Napa wine. I
she
think.
does.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
Love that. Stella, this has been so lovely. I'm just so glad that we happened to sit next to each other
I know.
at that workshop. And I can't exactly remember how we started talking, but it was, it was just something that happened organically.
Yes.
I really think that we were just laughing and taking notes at the
Yeah.
same time, and
Yeah.
we were like, oh, we're like on the same page. And then we had a conversation.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no, it's great. No, and you are such a fabulous host. You really
Thank you.
are, and the conversations are so wonderful. You ask great questions and have really wonderful things to say too. And I learn a lot, you know, about you and just about your songs and life. And so thank you
Thank you.
for doing this for all of us, you know.
This has been a
Yeah.
really, really nice. I mean, it's not like we have hundreds of people in the audience, but it's always so rewarding because they're just great conversations, and I feel like every week is different,
Yeah.
and you know, you are a wonderful conversationalist. I knew coming into this week that we were going to have some really great conversations. I didn't know where they would go, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's just really heartening to have smart conversations with people who some of my guests don't read, and so we talk about that process.
Yeah,
And
right.
you know the create it's been an interesting, I don't know, I feel like I'm learning, collectively learning something about
Yeah.
the way that creativity works and living a creative and meaningful life works
Yes.
by having these
Yes.
conversations.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Stella, thank you for being here. And Kentucky Avenue, everybody listening, please find their music. And Stella, you have some stuff out on your own name or just
Yes.
Kentucky Avenue?
Yes, under Stella Schindler. Yep. There are a couple of
Okay, great.
albums out there too. So
There you go.
thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody, thank you for being here. This was week 49. Next week is week 50. And my guest for next week, James Caan. Thanks for tuning into this show because you are my guest next week. It'll be really lovely. James is a writer and a songwriter, so that will be a fun conversation. Please follow Stella and Kentucky Avenue, Stella Schindler. And for myself, I have an upcoming live stream show on May 18th, which is a Tuesday. Mark your calendars for that. I would love to see you. I'll be playing a set of music, and it's a songwriter showcase, so a couple other songwriters will be playing that day as well. And who knows what I'll be playing, but if you have any suggestions, let me know. I will see you next time. Until then, take good care.